Oh,
Can you,
and 1 second, let me
Are we ready?
yeah, we are.
start.
6:02, we're
1
going
second.
to make sure the cameras are running.
And we can,
There we go.
That kind of makes it
There you
look
go.
like it's running.
Oh, I think it's this one.
I'm just gonna put this on the floor.
You put a chair over here?
Okay, Chair, we are ready.
And with that, we will call this meeting to order at 6:02. This is a work session. First item on the agenda.
Hey, there's a TV. When did that happen? Well, that's embarrassing.
Oh, you've got to look at
Remind me how
ourselves
you
now.
turn this on.
Is it not checked in?
That's classic.
See if that works.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were
Woke
supposed to
mine up.
check in.
Oh, there we
I
go.
went to,
Push the toggle to the left and it'll come.
yeah, but we're
Wait,
not.
Okay, I'm done.
Huh?
Do it again.
Okay, code revisions regarding equitable housing.
That's why I wasn't getting anything. All right. They can see me on the TV.
Pete, you want to
Greetings.
tell us what this
Thank
is
you.
about?
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, so I'm here to give you a very short update about the equitable housing code revisions. And this is a process that the planning department has been undertaking for the last eight or 9 months. And I'm going to try to tailor this to the Historic Review Board, and I'm not going to talk a lot about this issue with respect to other codes, but here goes. So the equitable housing goal is to provide diverse, quality, physically accessible, and affordable housing choices with access to opportunities, services, and amenities throughout the city. And that is a very broad definition that is intended to provide better choices to buy or rent for all of our residents of any age, ability, or income. And in particular, we're not changing the zoning map, and so this is a code revision. And what it means is, based on the existing zoning districts that we have, and their proximity to transit, schools, childcare, and other amenities, we would expand some of our housing opportunities. And how do we do this? The point of these revisions is to remove regulatory barriers in the zoning and development codes, and that would improve the flexibility in the zoning and development regulations. We're also producing better educational materials and brochures for a more transparent review process, and that includes cost estimates and how to build these units from a zoning perspective. And we're also doing a mapping application so that people can see in a general way throughout the city where different unit types can be built. So the general term for the type of housing that we're talking about is the missing middle. And this is housing which is not detached single-family homes, but could be built on sites that already have single-family detached homes in some cases, or it could be built in vacant areas like within the urban growth boundary. And we're talking about duplexes, triplexes, live-work units, accessory dwelling units, and other types of housing that is not prevalent in the city. Currently, most of the city's housing is about 71% of it is single-family detached homes, which is a pretty traditional mix for a city of us. And then the next most common housing are apartments, which is on the far end of the spectrum, which we would call an apartment unit under these code revisions, anything with 5 or more units attached. So I hope that this chart will help to explain some of what's being proposed here. Across the top here, we just have the residential zones, R10 through R3.5, and those numbers correspond to minimum lot size. So R10 means 10,000 square foot lot minimum, et cetera, per unit. And you'll see that if and then the housing types in the column on the left indicate housing types that are currently permitted in our code and defined in our code. And the other housing types that are in orange are housing types that are not currently defined in our code, but which would be permitted in these various zones with these code revisions. So you can see that in the lower density zones, which is the R10 through R6 zones, which constitutes most of the city, the only new housing types that would be permitted under these regulations would be internal conversions of existing structures and corner lot duplexes. And then in the other zones, as you get into medium density and high density zones, which are the R5 and R3.5 zones, you get a greater variety of unit types as you get denser. So I won't dwell on, what each of these unit types would be in terms of design standards and dimensional standards, but that information is all part of the proposal. And there's a lot of information on the city's project website about that. So what does it mean for Historic Review Board? These proposals don't change any of our overlay district review processes. For historic review, floodplain, geologic hazards, natural resource overlay districts, none of those codes and reviews are changing. What it might mean is that if someone proposes a new housing type, and it has to comply with whatever site plan and design review criteria are in place, any design review criteria, but it might need to be revised to comply with overlay district requirements, including historic overlay district requirements. And the historic guidelines for construction are going to supersede any of these, proposals. So that doesn't change. The one thing I did note is that the idea with an internal conversion is if these proposals pass as proposed, you could convert an existing dwelling that's at least 20 years old into 2 to 3 units. And that's under discussion right now. That would, trigger building code requirements and that sort of thing. But the idea is that we don't incentivize the destruction or demolition of perfectly good existing structures. And there's some additional standards in the code to ensure that, such as you can't expand onto an existing structure more than 500 square feet if your intention is to do that, and that kind of thing. So these recommendations came out of our project advisory team, which was 15 citizens, a broad group of stakeholders. And we're currently in the process of starting the public hearings. We've had 2 work sessions with the Planning Commission, and we're going to have more. There are some other code revisions proposed as well. I've just concentrated on the residential zone districts, but we are also talking about refining the standards and simplifying the standards for apartments in the R2 zone and apartments that are allowed already in the mixed-use downtown and mixed-use corridor zones. And that is a very, very brief synopsis of these proposals. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about this. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
It all made sense to me.
On one part, on a staff level, our design guides for new construction really concentrate on single-family homes. And we have kind of one or 2 pages when it comes to more commercial or multifamily, especially multifamily. And one thing to think about if these move forward is there a need to make revisions for the design guidelines for new construction to provide more guidance about if there is a vacant lot like in McLaughlin that wanted to do a duplex, what would be the recommendations to the design guidelines, how to do that appropriately and still meet the design guidelines?
There was one question, the attachments that you sent with the agenda, under historic, I left all my papers out in the car, so, but, There was something right at the very top that I had a question on.
Yeah, was it the removing the appeal process?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
What's with that?
Is this for chapter 2.28? Yeah, for the historic
It
review
was
board?
under this.
Okay, so what, chapter 2.28?
Yeah, 2.28.
Yeah, that is chapter 2 is where the city identifies all of our boards and commissions. And an interesting thing about the Historic Review Board is they talk about a land use appeals process inside chapter 2, which is generally just meant to be what's the board, what is it made up of?
Oh.
And so what we're realizing is that is probably an early 80s section about appeals, and it's not meshing perfectly with our city's land use appeal process, which
Oh,
was found in
okay.
1750.
So it's not like you're removing the appeal. It's just
No.
you're moving it into a different section.
But by doing that, there is one piece of, policy question that's going to be asked, is there's an appeal fee of $50, and that is in Title II. And what we'd like to do, that's also odd that we have an appeal fee within a Chapter 2. The city commission adopts appeal fees every year. And they go through an ordinance, and we have our list of all of our city fees. We would like that fee to go on to the normal city fee. The policy question is, should it stay $50, will need to happen as we move forward with the city commission. But what we're asking is to take out an appeals process is entitled to and a fee that's entitled to, and both of those really are in the wrong place. They should be in our
So
fee
you're just
schedule,
shifting them.
and they should be in our appeals, our appeals process in chapter 1750.
And we don't actually set fees.
No, you don't, but
It's
but
the
this is something that
commission.
has been in the city code since the
Okay.
early 80s. And that's, something that the Historic Review Board probably want to be involved in commenting if the city commission chooses to have a different fee. But right now, in order to change a fee, you would have to, amend a code.
Right.
And that just, once again, it's in the wrong home.
Okay, that was just, I saw that and went,
Yeah.
what? So, okay, thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions?
I just
for
had one
Mr.
general
Walter?
question, if that's all right. So just for my own education, the ADUs,
Yeah.
is there still the code that whoever owns that property has to occupy it?
This is a topic of much discussion. The proposal is to remove the requirement for owner occupancy,
Yeah,
but it's under debate with the planning commission right now. There is there's some evidence that if you remove that requirement, it really doesn't have any effect on whether it's owner occupied or not. And there's some studies that PSU did that show that the vast majority of ADUs end up being owner occupied anyway. And so from an equity standpoint, it's the only housing type that has that requirement in the entire zoning code.
Right.
However, it's a topic of debate because people are concerned about rentals, and they're also concerned about Airbnbs and short-term rentals as well. And so that's kind of a separate discussion that's also happening at the same time, and we want a holistic approach to regulation of short-term rentals for all unit types, not just for ADUs. So, yeah, that's something that isn't within the scope of this particular project at the moment because having a vacation rental policy like you might have on a city and the coast does take a lot of work to figure out, and we're not like that, but.
right, it's just from an investment standpoint,
From an investment standpoint.
somebody
yeah.
it stopped me from doing things of where I've wanted to buy something and put an ADU over a garage or build it,
Because of that.
but as an investment, I'm not living there.
Right.
So it's prevented people like me or others to being able to do that or further that ability to increase the housing stock.
Right. Yeah, and if the yardstick for these housing changes, and this isn't the only yardstick, but if the general focus of these is to try to remove barriers, that was one of the things that was considered a barrier.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it came out of the project advisory team recommendation, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Good to get rid of that.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Walter.
thank you.
And we'll move to item 2B, High Street Crosswalk and Curb Extension. Is that yours, Joe?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just, yeah, 1 second.
Let me start by saying hello. I'm John Lutz, Public Works Director. Don't come to the HRB meetings often
Yeah.
enough, right?
been
Let me
a
turn
long
on
time.
my.
Actually, would you
sorry.
mind if I gave a little preface to help you?
No,
Okay.
I'd love you to. Just trying to kill the time while you're distributing
Oh, sorry.
letters.
Just to give a little background of this, a major public improvement is listed as something the Historic Review Board reviews. And to this day, we've never had a kind of a bright definition of what a major public improvement is. And so this request came in, staff looked at the adopted 7th Street corridor plan, which did allow bump outs, had a specific design that wanted to see the scoring pattern of the bump outs, ensure that you could see the historic scoring pattern of the sidewalks. So you kind of have the traditional scoring pattern of the sidewalk, and then the bump out is scored to be seen as separate. And so that was a condition of approval when this went through. And so as kind of street improvements happen in McLaughlin District, we've looked at both street furniture, kind of that palette of the 7th Street street furniture was approved, and they've been put on, streets other than 7th Street. And then this curb extension request came in. And so on a staff level, I'm asking the Historic Review Board, do you have staff concurrence that this is compatible with the 7th Street corridor plan and can be done through a kind of staff concurrence of this bump out on 3rd and High, which Don will talk in more detail? Or do you feel that this needs to go in front of a noticed Historic Review Board meeting because it's not part of actually on 7th Street? And then that would require the city will then have to go back and notice it, and it would be back in the August meeting. So I'm going to provide John a little background. Go ahead.
Okay, so Denise is here as well. We had like an 11th hour conversation last night, so she's been scrambling a little bit today. So I said, well, I don't know how this is going to go, but it's okay with me if she comes up here. But that's up to, I guess, is it Chair Basinger? But I'll go through my presentation. You can
Please.
comment. So how many of you know where High Street is? How many of you have traveled on it recently?
When they let you.
We are in the clutches of a pretty extensive project on High Street. Right now, they're working on the water lines and the gas lines. There's still some, and the storm lines as well. There's still some communication work to do, but a lot of underground work is going on there right now. And really, it's going from just south of South 2nd Street to 3rd Street. And I'll show you plans in this presentation, but the street was on our 5-year pavement maintenance plan. And you may not know this, but any street that has sidewalks and existing ADA ramps, that now is a requirement through the Americans with Disability Act, that if we touch the paving, if we mill off paving, or if we do an overlay, or in this case, if we reconstruct the street, we're obligated to replace those ADA ramps, okay? So that's been a challenge for us, because when we started the pavement maintenance fee back in 2008, the estimates and the plan was to just do pavement. And since that time, ADA has come out a lot clearer and said, you shall, not you may, you shall upgrade any ADA ramp in that project. So this project touches a lot of ADA ramps. So I'll just go ahead and talk through it. It's way more information than what I would think you wanted, but given the time and the fact that we wanted to get it to the HRB, this is the best I could do. So bear with me. Lots of, these are actually plans from not the waterline project, but from the street reconstruction project. So everything, this is actually the intersection of South High Street and South 2nd Street. So as you, does this have a pointer? So I don't know if you want to turn around, but
I can
Okay, so this area right here, you'd be coming up from 99E here, and many people make that right-hand turn and go up South End Road. Or at that, there's several hundred feet where it's South High Street, but most people know it as South End Road. And then, or you can go straight through to Center Street and go up the Center Street Hill if you like. So we're redoing water lines and all the pavement on South Second Street, but most of the work is on High Street. So this is just kind of one end of the project, and in this intersection, we really don't have the option of doing curb extensions because we really don't have the width there to do the curb extension. So we're really showing you, I'm going to show you the whole project, but there's really two places where we're proposing curb extensions. And what Christina kind of alluded to is something I've heard of, should have known about, but didn't know about. I've never thought of these sidewalk improvements or curb extensions for that matter as something that met the definition of public infrastructure that needed to be in front of the Historic Review Board. It seems a little weird to me, but I get it. I get that maybe there's some concerns there. If you look at these areas, most of the sidewalks are a mix mash of problems, just pedestrian problems. I think generally they're consistent in width, but at each of the corners, the radiuses may be at weird angles. There's just a lot of uniqueness to High Street, Center Street, most of the streets in the McLaughlin neighborhood. They're a challenge for us because when we do these projects, not only, it'd be different if we were building a new subdivision, but we're building, and it's really kind of an infill project or a rehab of existing. So we have to often figure out how to tie into the existing sidewalks. So the grades are a little different. When you build an ADA ramp, often we have catch basins like right in these corners right here, which don't lend themselves well to catch. So to build, whether it's got a curb ramp or not, but to build it right such that we're not resulting in trip hazards and those kind of things, we are often moving catch basins when we're doing this as well.
Is that radius you're pointing at?
Yes.
Up there, the way it is or the way you're going to make it?
That's a good question.
Suppose had that question too.
I'll tell you the reason I ask is that the buses coming off High Street, turning on to Second, have a very difficult time with that corner. They often have to wait for the traffic coming up Second Street to get out of the way before they can make it around that corner because they have to go into the oncoming lane to do it.
Well, what I can tell from the plans, which have a much more detailed drawing of that corner, is we're pretty much matching what's there. Yeah, part of the problem is not only are we tight, here for a turning movement, we don't have much right-of-way back there.
I see that.
So then it becomes a right-of-way acquisition challenge. So what we are obligated to do through the ADA is to, using the right-of-way that we have, rebuild the ramp in a way that's ADA accessible.
They'll be using the ramp.
So this is just kind of another segment of High Street, and Denise pointed out that this is not South High Street, this is High Street. So it changes at South Second as far as I know, and our mapping shows it that way. Although I was questioning, and I haven't figured out my mapping system yet, this First Street is South First Street, so maybe it is South High Street on this segment.
It is on that side.
So I don't want to know where it changes, but in our maps, it shows it changing it at South Second. So again, we're not proposing much change here. We're, adjusting so that we've got good curb ramps at the intersection, but there's no curb extension shown on at this location. This is the first curb extension that we're proposing. It's at First Street, not South First Street, but First Street and High Street. And really what was the inspiration between these, the inspiration for these curb extensions was a couple of things. We've been talking about TriMet, about creating better TriMet transit stops. And sometimes that means a curbside stops, so they don't have to, somebody doesn't have to go navigate a ramp, get onto the pavement, and then try to get back on the bus. So the bus basically doesn't pull out of the travel lane, they just have a place to stop that's essentially curb tight. So that was an objective. The other one is out of all, we get a lot of neighborhood speeding complaints. We hear a lot from the McLaughlin neighborhood, and High Street, as well as Center Street, are by far where we get the most concerns. And so one of the means to calm traffic is curb extensions. And so that was another reason. That combined with, as a pedestrian, this style of curb drop where we're trying to extend the steep driveway through the sidewalk such that the pedestrian doesn't have to maneuver, a more dramatic change. Let's lots of times driveways slope across the sidewalk. In this case, it will be a flat sidewalk for them to negotiate. They'll have a little transition from the regular sidewalk grade down, but it'll be flat, it won't be angled. So this is one location where we're proposing the curb extension. The other thing is it shortens the pedestrians' walk out in the travel lane. So oftentimes, there may be cars parked there, so they can peek out between cars, but it doesn't feel nearly as safe. So this shortens that distance just a few feet, maybe 6 feet. This is another block. Again, this takes us through 2nd Street and High Street. No change there other than the ADA ramps get upgraded. This is 3rd Street, and this is where we've added 2 curb extensions. So for those of you that need the point of reference, it's called the High Street Market. It's right on the Quonset Hut. Thank you. Right here, and then the phone company sits over here. And really, again, there's a driveway right here that we were trying to incorporate into that. TriMet wanted this to be a longer, really, TriMet's design would include longer curb extensions so that both the front door and the back door of the bus could exit onto that curb or a curb extension. We didn't have that opportunity without redesigning the phone company's parking lot. So we built it as big as we could. And again, the intent would be to extend the existing sidewalk. And we mentioned some scoring, and I'll show you on 7th Street. On High Street, there's not a lot of consistency on scoring there, but we'll do a good job with that. And by the way, these little hatch lines aren't representative of the scoring. They're just, it's an indication that the contractor has to hit a particular slope, okay? So, and then on this corner, again, just more curb extension. This, out of the whole project, this is where we see the most pedestrian activity. So trying to do our best to facilitate easier pedestrian crossing, better bus stops. But yes, it's different in terms of from what we had before. We had more like this kind of corner right there. You can see that kind of a corner. I think this one here is pretty closely matched. Okay, this one here, there's the old corner, here's the new. These directions are a little tough. I think it's more just trying to give you an indication of where we're at. Here's an example of something that I don't know exactly what year, maybe Denise will know when that happens, but there's some of these corners that got this stamped concrete, which is not, doesn't meet any historic standards whatsoever. I think it was decorative at the time or thought to be decorative, but if sidewalks are in style or not, that's definitely not a style that anybody's trying to emulate anymore. They're hard to patch. You can't patch, in fact, without having a real problem with it. Again, sidewalk widths, for the most part, they're similar. There's typically lots of encroachment. Sometimes there's not even a curb. Lots of times these catch basins are where we don't want them for pedestrians access, so we're changing all of that. And again, here's some more of the stamped concrete.
Can you go back to that last picture for a sec? So if you're coming down High Street, hanging a right onto Third Street, are you gonna somewhat encroach into the opposing traffic that could be on Third Street? Because that thing pushes
That's
out
dead end,
really
isn't it?
far.
This way? Coming this way, making this turn, or coming this
That
way?
way.
Yeah, that way.
Yeah, it's pretty wide through there, so
Okay.
no. Obviously, if you're driving a bus, yes.
Or a trailer or something.
Yeah, this is dead-ended, by the way,
This goes
but
into the block.
your same point is right here, if you're making that turn,
same.
can you make
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
There's obviously, there's a lot of parked cars in this neighborhood, so
They head in those parking spaces.
right here they do, but over here they don't.
Yeah.
So,
Parallel.
yeah, typically you'll see parked cars that are almost right up to the corner, parked out, nosed in. So we'll lose a little bit of that, but again, to me, it makes it safer than what you've described.
Yeah, I'm curious.
So the turning radiuses, oftentimes, especially in these neighborhoods, shouldn't be made at the posted 25 miles per hour. They should be pretty slow. And so, again, I think that
Just
makes
more
it, from a
pronounced
pedestrian's
here.
perspective, a little safer. And then, again, this is at Third, again, kind of a mix mash of different, of this stamped concrete. And I'm trying to think, get my bearings here. So this is the corner where the Kwanzaa Hut is at, or the store. And this is
Across from the store.
across from the store. Yeah, I think this is on the telephone company corner. So really, again, I think we're here tonight because there's this question about what is meaningful public infrastructure, and we want to do what's right for the neighborhood. That's it's ironic that we're here now, but at the same time, to me, I think this is what many in the neighborhood, and Denise, I don't think disagrees with me. I think her letter, maybe she can describe it because I haven't read it yet, but what she described to me was it mostly emanates that she thinks that's what they'd like to see. They'd like the notification and the opportunity to talk about these in the future. So that's why is there anything else you want to add? Okay. I'm done.
Okay.
So I do know Denise is here, and she did send public comment, so we can bring her up to make public comment.
You have a public comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
For the record, please state your name.
I know the drill.
I know you know the drill.
For the record, I'm Denise McGriff. I'm representing the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. I'm the vice chair of our association, also the land use chair. Was not my intent to give this at the last minute, but we had, as John said, we had some last minute sort of dancing. And I wanted to be responsive to Christina and to John. So I'm just going to kind of paraphrase this because I know you just got it and I just finished typing it about 20 minutes ago. Basically, what I wanted to talk to you about is Claire was around and involved in the 7th Street Corridor Plan. And that came about through an effort by the Neighborhood Association to work with the Urban Renewal Agency because part of that area is in the Urban Renewal District. So that's how those improvements got done. Otherwise, the city wouldn't have had any money. We had a very extensive process, and it was really great to see how people came together to participate, to look at all aspects. The key thing is that this was a major public improvement. We wanted to make sure that it met the Secretary of Interior standards, and that, obviously we wouldn't have had curb extensions back in the day when this was the main commercial corridor for the neighborhood. But we think in light of where we are going as a community, as a society, and things that we need to make things more pedestrian safe, we needed to look at how we could modify those. So hence the requirement that the scoring pattern be the same, that the street names be stamped in the sidewalk, and then we looked at all the other aspects. So what I put in this note is that it was a very comprehensive look, and I really don't want the city to be lumping other areas of the neighborhood into the 7th Street corridor plan because it's not the same. The reason that that plan is very unique and specific is that is a all-zoned commercial along there. What I think and what I've discussed with a couple of members is that we think it would be a good idea because we know in the future that there will be other public improvements that will be needed. And we think it would be a great idea for the neighborhood association, whoever wants to be involved, sit down with John and Christina, maybe we can generate a list of areas where we think might be appropriate if funds are available to put in future curb extensions. One example was, we'd like to see one at 6th and John Adams. Library, church, senior center, Ermitinger House. Now, that is a key crosswalk area where people are going back and forth and, you know, actually they're going at diagonal crossings, which is kind of interesting because they do have those in Roseburg. So what I want to propose to you is a compromise, is that we would like to, we have our next steering committee meeting on the 1st. We would like you to consider making a decision regarding this. Again, I don't think there's going to be any objection from the neighborhood association, but I don't have the authority to say that. So I want to bring this before them on the 1st, and if you want to approve this, would you consider making this a provision that we would review and we would approve it? And I did say approve in the letter, because I'm going to be the one advocating for this to the neighborhood association, that this is a good thing and that we should support this. But what I want to add to that, to our neighborhood, is that I really am going to challenge them to come up with a list to give to John and to Christina to say, here's some other areas we want you to consider. And maybe we do an amendment to an appendix to the 7th Street corridor plan saying, here are the non-commercial streets we think might be available for future curb extensions at some later date when construction projects can accommodate them. So that we have a list, we don't have to come back to the Historic Review Board except to approve the list, and we can just move on from there. To give you an example of what we considered a public improvement, and by the way, these were after my time as staff, I would not have approved that. That doesn't meet the Secretary of Interior standards, and I wouldn't have recommended to the Historic Review Board that those stamped curbs be put in. So I don't know when those were done. But for instance, we had a request that came sort of from the back doorway. The post office at the time was thinking about getting rid of all walking routes, and they wanted to put in those huge, gigantic mailboxes. Well, there was sort of an outcry of the neighborhood association that was a major public improvement that was going to impact the street corners and things of that sort where they wanted to put them. And we recommended that the city not move forward with allowing the U.S. Postal Service to put these things in. And where they are in the neighborhoods, they're just not great. I don't know if you have them where you live, but we don't have any in McLaughlin. And there's some outside the conservation district, but they are not within the conservation district. I don't know if they're in Kenema, but we did not feel that those were in keeping with the characteristics of the neighborhood, nor did they meet the Secretary of Interior standards. We said, unless you want to design something that fits in, well, they don't want to do that. So that's just a little example of where something would have impacted the character of the neighborhood that we didn't think was appropriate for our historic district. So that's my 5-minute spiel, and it's probably telling me, are you ready to go to dinner?
Yeah, there was quite an
Let me just send a message.
a lot
saying
of
I can't
people
talk.
showing up when they were talking about the
7th Street corridor?
post office, no, the post
Oh,
office.
post office, yeah, we had a lot of
I
people,
remember that.
show up, and they were not, well, you know, they serve a purpose, but they're just not super, super attractive, and they don't fit in with a historic neighborhood.
Yep.
So if you have any questions about our recommendation, it'd be, number one, we want to work with the staff to put together a list for future, and maybe we come back to you guys to append the 7th Street plan so it accommodates other streets. And then number two, we want to have an opportunity to make an official vote before you. And again, it's no fault of anybody's that we didn't get any notice. They saw me on Monday. That was my notice, but that's, you know, that doesn't meet the letter of the law. And so I've talked to the chair and we're willing to sort of forego that if we can kind of work together on this. Any questions?
Can we, I mean, isn't this just more informational to us, or are we,
So you
do
have.
we have to make a decision? I mean, you know, what's our next step?
Yeah, there are a couple of next steps you can do. You know, this was brought up as more of a staff concurrence, which sometimes staff brings up staff concurrence when we believe we can approve this at the staff level, but there's a gray enough question. We're asking for concurrence, and if we don't get concurrence, then we would tell the applicant or the city that you need to come and apply for a land use application. In this situation, one option could be tonight that the board could agree that with staff concurrence, that this meets the intent of the 7th Street Corridor Plan and provide policy recommendations for future projects. One thing I would not recommend, and I understand why Denise said it, but I would not recommend as staff that the Historic Review Board provide require approval from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, but I definitely think the Historic Review Board can recommend staff concurrence with a presentation to the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. And I'm going to put it on Mr. Lewis that if he's not seeing kind of concurrence from the Neighborhood Association, then they need to circle back and decide if it needs to go to a notice land use hearing, would be my recommendation.
And we can do the concurrence without public notice?
Well, what we're saying is this, that what I'm saying as staff is I believe that this project meets the intent of the 7th Street Corridor Plan and would not rise to a major public improvement. That is something that you could agree with and then provide any policy direction for future work projects. And as well as say, we agree, but you need to make sure that the city goes and makes a presentation to the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. My only recommendation to staff is not to include in whatever decision you make tonight, that it requires an approval. And that's just my, as a staff, good practices of making sure that you're not intertwining a private organization and the Historic Review Board. And basically put the onus on Mr. Lewis that if he's not seeing, support, that he would come back to us.
Well, I've got two, and I'd be happy to come back. I'm a little bit concerned about timing on this project. There's a couple options. One, we can come back, but that's only if we have the time that the contractor has allotted. The easier thing would be to just remove the curb extensions and just put them in as per the ADA compliant, but not do the curb extension. We have that option as well. It's a cheaper option, definitely would cost the city less to do it that way. I just think that the neighborhood, at the end of the day, is gonna want those curb extensions at these locations. So I agree we can take it to the neighborhood you said a steering committee meeting? Yeah. In a steering committee meeting, which is soon. And if there's problems there at that, we're kind of trying to dance this dance of getting the water line work done, getting the contractor, there's two different contractors, so we're just trying to balance that, and I want to get the street done this year. It's already a struggle gonna be a struggle to get the street done. So I would love it if the Historic Review Board would make a determination, ask staff to meet with the neighborhood, get concurrence, and we'll do that.
I think the point that Ms. McGriff made about these locations not currently being within the boundaries of the 7th Street project make it a little bit difficult for us to make a statement that they are, because we can't, or that they're compatible with it. Yeah, sure, they're compatible with it, but they're not part of it. So it seems like that's the step that has to come first. And I know that doesn't help your situation, and probably, as you said, everyone in the neighborhood would rather see it done while it's most economically efficient to do that, which is right now. But I don't know.
So
Can I ask for some rebuttal just real quickly? I want to make sure you.
I think that we're debating right now,
Yeah,
so.
for the neighborhood, I want to make sure you read the.
Actually, Denise, hold on, let
think
the
that
board
we're
talk,
speaking-
let the board talk, and then we
So
can do that.
I tend to agree also with Denise's point that I don't know that the 7th Street Corridor Plan should be applied across the entire conservation district as it was specific to that. I'll admit that I obviously was not around at that time, and so I'm not as familiar with it as some people might be. But some of the elements that are in that plan are not in these modifications here. So there is no street furniture specifically, so there's no significant, I'm trying to read what it was here in the conditions before. So any street furniture, permanent art installations, or other substantial amenities located within that should be brought before the board. There doesn't seem to be any of that in this proposal. There also doesn't seem to be any significant landscaping or plantings or anything of that nature, or really any lighting or anything that has significant decorative elements or design elements. So in my opinion, so long as it's limited to just the sidewalks and there's no decorative design elements to that, I don't know that it would meet my judgment as a, I'm trying to find what the exact text is
Major
here.
public improvement.
Major public improvement that would require review and approval by this board.
I would agree.
Now, if they were to add, public art, landscaping,
Lighting.
benches, lighting, then I think that would change. But if it's just limited to non-decorative concrete,
I have a question, but it's a question of Denise. Denise, wasn't the 7th Street corridor, was it just the corridor or didn't it go out like like a block in either
No,
direction?
It was just the corridor, just between, it says it's between Harrison and Singer Hill. And we did not go beyond, the plan
For
does not
some
go
reason,
beyond
I
that.
thought it went out like a
No.
block on
No.
either side. No? Okay.
They talked about that early on, but the budget wouldn't
Oh,
accommodate it, and when we go beyond a block, it wasn't commercial. It just, all the zoning on that
commercial,
front's
right.
on 7th.
Okay.
Is that, and I'm sure you concur with
Yeah,
that.
what happened was, when construction was going, if a property owner on a side street of 7th wanted to also have their sidewalk improved, kind of those one properties back behind.
Right.
Sometimes we did that. So when you look down 7th, that you might see kind of little small extensions on the side street, but it never went back past.
I said,
Roadblock.
okay, because I remember that there was talk about,
Yeah.
it's been
And
so long ago that
But
it's.
those property owners did pay some money into that, but it was
Okay.
one of those, once you're already in the street, I want to be involved and I want to get my sidewalk finished.
Okay, cool. So what's
Any
the
other
decision?
comments or observations?
The only other thing, is it appropriate for me to add anything else at this point?
By all means do.
I agree with Board Member Blythe that it wasn't my impression that the kind of work that this involved met what I think of as a major public improvement. Defining that would be a good thing for us to do in the future, because I don't think that every curb extension, especially in areas that we know are bus transit or high-speed areas, it definitely would meet that. I don't think it meets that definition, but the fact that we don't have a definition leaves it questionable out there and subject to, you may think so and somebody else may not. So if your decision could, at least in this instance, defer the fact that it's not a major public improvement, that would be helpful. I think, I don't know, I'll leave it to Christina, but that's where
Okay.
But then also maybe define that and, address it and, work with the McLaughlin neighborhood to identify those areas that perhaps need it or whatever.
Can we, this is a question for Christina, can we do a conditional approval of the specific curb flares proposed here without, conditional upon the approval of the Neighborhood Association Steering Committee?
You're basically
That
giving
seems like
direction
the way
back to
go.
staff.
Okay.
So moved. So moved, just what he said.
do we want to do that, or do we want to find that we don't need to review it at all? Or,
Yeah, so you're just giving recommendations to me.
Yes,
It's kind of, and it's all this parameters, so until we actually have that definition of a major public improvement. I'm trying to hear back from the board, kind of where I'm, the differentiation between the two. Because, I think I think there's a commitment to talk about this, but in the meantime, kind of, what Board Member Blythe was saying, was that kind of your thought process about how this curb extension in this area didn't rise to that level, but other things may, and please, keep coordinating staff with the Historic Review Board.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So make a recommendation to proceed with the curb extensions, subject to the approval on August 1st by the McLaughlin Steering Committee. Is that your motion?
And with the intent of identifying those areas and, where other improvements might be made.
And Kelly Reed, who just came back from maternity leave on Monday, will be looking at kind of your work plan as we get in the fall. And you do have quite a number of things like potential work plan items, like historic review board policies, and this may be one of them, which is kind of the work it may take to actually get a codified definition, or either a codified definition or a policy definition of what major public improvements are and are not.
Now, if everybody understands the motion, do we have a second?
Do we need a motion,
I don't
or
think
is
so.
it
I
just
think
a
you're giving me-
recommendation?
A recommendation?
I'm giving
Okay.
the recommendation.
Then-
Okay, and what I'm not hearing from the board is, this needs to come back through a notice land use application next month.
Well, unless.
I would
the-
say only if McLaughlin
Okay.
says
Okay,
no.
okay.
So,
But I would add to that, I agree with Denise's point that the 7th Street corridor plan should not be applied in general across the entire district in the future for any additional plans on other streets in the area.
Are we all in agreement? We are.
Okay. I think we're ready to pause. You want to?
All right, we will temporarily adjourn here
Oh,
and
yeah, an extra 7
return
minutes. Woohoo.
for the
Too slow.
5 minutes.
meeting in 7 minutes. We're all back and we will reconvene the meeting now. It is 7:08 and we are on item number 3, preservation grant on the agenda.
You can't get that.
Oh, preservation grant, are we,
Oh, on the.
I think we're design advice first, aren't we?
Just look at yours.
Well, I don't know,
Oh.
do you have a different version of the
No,
agenda?
in my head I had it flipped.
Okay.
We can, I know that, I don't think the preservation grant person will be here tonight, so if
Okay.
the board would like to just switch the agenda item, we can do that.
Let us change the agenda and move to item 4 and then return to item 3 afterwards. This is design advice for new construction on a residential site in the Kenema National Register District at 4th and Hedges. May we have a commissioner report?
Thanks. As you know, design advice is an ability for the Historic Review Board to meet with applicants early on in their design process before they kind of commit to a final plan and do a notice land use. Tonight, you can give non-binding advice. There's no decision tonight. We will allow public comments. And I think your goal is things you can give recommendations that can help bring a proposal closer to meeting the standards. What we have this evening, this is a property located at the intersection of 4th and Hedges. The second time you've seen this. The applicant actually just sent me some revised plans. And just one second. This is what was in your packet this is the elevation from 4th Avenue looking up. This is what you'd see from Hedges. Nope. No, this is what was in the packet, and then I'll show what's in the revised plan. And then this is looking from the other side. What I'd like to do is show you what the applicant has turned it in as a revision. He's kind of took the two peak dormers and turned it into a continuous kind of shed dormer. Along with your packet, I've provided the design guidelines for bungalows. So that is attached to your agenda. And on a staff level, I really commend the applicants for detaching the garage. I think that did a big thing for reducing the massing, but I still have some concerns on the front elevation. I do like what they've done here to have kind of a shed dormer that again lowers that, but with the topography and having really what is a 2.5-story building, I still have concerns about this front elevation. And so I'm going to leave it with that on my staff side, but I'd like to welcome up the applicants and their designer, and I can, what I can do, if you'd like to take this, you can kind of drive the PDF. And if you circle things with the mouse, the HRV can see it on their screen.
I think. Do you have the other one?
I do.
Can you go back to that one for a sec?
Ooh, well, I need that. Let's see.
Or if it's too hard, oh, never mind.
Oh,
Got it.
nope, I can't see it.
Yeah.
Well, if you click on the, you see you're on the right, the next one to the left of the tab is,
Over here?
no, PDF.
Oh, isn't that bringing up the,
I didn't get the entire thing because I
No,
didn't
it's good
notice
enough.
that it was on legal paper.
too far away?
Well, this right here.
I asked her.
She says it's okay now?
So there should be, so that's the original from Hedges, oh, and that,
So that's the one that was turned into
right,
an agenda.
right, yeah.
And this is what,
Just,
oh, I,
just be very careful. I have it way in the back.
Yeah.
okay, 1 second.
I got you.
Then that way you won't knock it over.
I'm a happy camper.
Okay,
There,
so
that's
you
it.
can just scroll between these different ones if you want to take them.
Okey-doke.
You can just click on them.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so,
That looks great.
it's my turn, or?
Yeah,
Okay,
state your
so-
name for the record and.
Bo Robinson with Design Providence LLC. This is our second time here, and based on your original advice, we worked on trying to reduce the massing by detaching the garage and trying to do everything possible to mitigate the slope as much, obviously, this is a very sloped lot, so that's Mother Nature. And then we had a brief meeting with Christina, and we talked about a few other options to try to maybe try to capture the Kenema bungalow theme as much as possible. So we looked at potentially doing a continuous shed dormer all the way across on that north side as opposed to the two gables with the shed in between. It doesn't necessarily change massing, but it definitely kind of, I don't know what the right word would be. It helps it kind of blend in a little bit more, so. And in detaching the garage, let's see. So that's the one from Fourth with the shed. And I'll just click over to, I had a different picture,
I
sorry.
think go to your.
Oh, is this scrolled? Okay, got it. I'm figuring it out. One more, no? There we go.
So that was with the, with the two gable dormers with the shed in between.
That's what was, right?
That
That's
was.
the original one.
Not the original, it was what was turned in recently for this agenda. And then I kind of tried to work a last minute thing in with another option, basically. So after some advice from Christina, so that's
Then you
the
went to-
difference.
Okay.
Where is that one? Right there, right? Yeah. So A, B.
Having our eyes tested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we did, let's see, so it'd be on this one, floor plan or site plan, let's see here. So, and with the detached garage, it really helped out quite a bit for us to push the house, towards hedges a little bit more, to make that work for that space. So I believe we are encroaching on the standard setback on that street side, as a street side yard, is that correct? Or-
It would be the side yard, correct, the corner
Do you have a
side.
site plan?
Yeah, is that on?
Pop up?
There was, if you looked,
we
one
saw-
of your other
Oh,
PDFs.
Site?
Site.
There
So
we
this
go.
is,
That's
yeah,
what I wanted to
here we
see.
go.
Oh, boy, yeah, you are kind of close.
So it's about 8 feet from the property line on that, on hedges. I believe is it technically 15 there?
15 for a corner side yard, from the
Yeah.
property line, not the edge of street.
Right, yeah.
So you're at 8?
Yeah,
They have to apply for a variance for that?
They can apply for a preservation incentive, and I told the applicant that you have to kind of make the case of why moving the house forward is making the house, maybe reducing the massing, or like, what's the purpose for doing it?
Yeah.
That overall would
Okay.
be a benefit to the historic district.
yeah, it was basically in detaching the garage, we're trying to make it realistic to use that garage and create enough space there for everything that it has to go there, walkway to the, door and all that sort of stuff. So we're going, right up tight to the setbacks on the south and make sure I get my east and south sides. And
Oh, yeah.
but it helped quite a bit to extend that towards the what would be the west. Now that's actually, let me measure in the real world here, because I think that 8 feet is to the porch, to the actual house. I'm sorry, I should have separated those two. The actual conditioned space is about 11 feet. So, and I don't know what the rule is as far as porches over setbacks. I don't know if
So
there's-
front and rear porches can go into setbacks, but we're silent, so side porches, we don't have that exception. Though, once again, the Historic Review Board, if you're looking at where this house should be placed to have the least size impact, that's what you'd be looking at. And where should this house be placed?
So-
And then that's when the preservation incentives
Setbacks.
get placed. But if you can't make the finding, then you can't make the finding.
So the other benefit is that it helps us bring the floor elevation of the main floor elevation of the house down about 3 feet. If we push it up, we're probably having to go up another couple feet. So everything we can do, like I said, I'm doing everything possible to try to mitigate the height of the building, which is a real challenge on this sloped of a lot, so. We're planning on doing a lot of terracing, landscape terracing to kind of reduce the height of the building on the north side, and try to soften that. Same thing, really on and off hedges too, so. And is there any other drawings you want to look at?
The south elevation that
Okey-doke.
shows the garage, the driveway, and the front entry, or the
Right here, and
front
it
entry,
doesn't
rear
match, the south elevation doesn't match up to the alternate elevation with the different shed dormers, just for reference, so. Actually, the benefit to doing that continuous shed is we would actually push more of the upper floor to the south, and we'd actually have almost the same shed dormer on the south side that we'd have on the north, so it'd be probably more symmetrical, more balanced, probably a little bit more bungalow-ish on the south side as well.
So I'm gonna, you don't show the driveway grade on here.
Well, I mean, the intention
From
was
that
to go
point
up, basically as quickly as we could from the street and then try to level off as soon as possible. So I don't know if
Okay.
this, I'd have to do the math on what the actual slope rating is here. We might be over closer to the front porch by the time we actually catch up there, but, so that's, I'm not showing a existing grade, profile, which that would be on the actual submittal for the, approval, so. The neighbor's garage probably sits about right there, pretty close to the property line, so that's gonna take up a bit of that profile.
I think I saw a drawing that shows both garages.
Oh, yeah, that's on here. Somewhere. There we go, it's kind of a context, massing context, drawing. And there's gonna, those grades are probably gonna change a little bit, so. I'm assuming actually that the floor elevation of the proposed house is gonna be a little bit lower as compared to the garage on the, uphill from it, so. As a matter of fact, I could flip over to, let's see. That's actually showing a little bit more of a difference there. A little less lower level, below the main floor. It's dropped down about 2 or 3 feet from where it was on the other drawing there.
So that's what
so.
you'd see from
Hedges?
Ford, or from,
From hedges.
From hedges, okay.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
And that's what was previously submitted, so it'll drop down a bit, so.
So dropping down, you eliminate the daylight?
Well, that's a possibility.
Because the other one shows without windows.
But yeah, I was kind of playing around with that. And I'm not sure what everybody's opinion is on whether you want to show it as a story or try to make it disappear, visually.
It's not finished space, right? It's just crawl space or?
Would be finished.
Yeah, well, they were talking about maybe doing like an unfinished space, if the height allowed for it, so, just in more of a kind of utility space, I think, but, I suppose, I don't know what your guys' viewpoint is as far as, let me get to, oops, oh, now I did it. If I go like, no, just making it worse, okay. So yeah, I took the windows out there to see what that looked like. Just trying to kind of try some options. I'm trying to get to the north elevation without windows.
But the other
So,
one has windows.
what's that?
The other option had the windows.
Right. And I just wanted to sort of see the difference and kind of get some feedback, I guess, on that difference. So let me flip to the, oops, that's not it. Where did I lose it? Oh, right there. Okay. I moved
Yeah.
it.
looks
So
better
back
with
to, okay, so there's with windows. Do you want me to click over to the other one or?
I mean, it looks better with windows than without.
Okay, well,
I
that's
think-
my opinion too.
But you might
So-
think it looks too busy with too many windows.
I
Could it
think
be a
it brings
blank wall?
more attention to it
My opinion was
with the
that
windows.
the windows, it adds a lot of busyness and it makes it clearly into a 2.5 story, which would not meet the bungalow design guidelines as opposed to a 1.5 story with unfinished space.
If it was like an old bungalow, probably on a slope, you'd probably find a door and then probably some tiny little windows or something like that.
Right.
Small windows,
To me,
really.
having the windows on the bottom, it draws your eyes, it makes it look taller, you know, and
Oh, and this is actually taller too, just for a reference. I actually was looking at the grades and figuring if I could do a little bit more terracing. So I wanted to kind of look at what was feasible to do. So that's actually up about 3 feet from the other one. So that's gonna make it look less tall as
Yeah.
well. So
I don't know if we're jumping into comments already, but yeah, I highly prefer this version here over the previous. It's a lot. The other one is, there's no specific element that's maybe doesn't fit into bungalow, but overall it's a lot and is a little bit busier than what.
It's better
are
if
we
it's
doing
tucked in lower.
comments now?
We're giving design
Can I
advice.
design advice? To me, the columns coming from the ground up, it draws your eye, it makes it more vertical. I think if they didn't have the columns all the way down, it was just on that second level. It's just visually, it draws your eyes up and makes it look more vertical as opposed to horizontal.
No, you're right.
I agree. And I don't know what your structural.
well, we're gonna need
alternatives there
something to
are.
hold the deck up there.
Quite so.
Or you can cantilever out.
You might put siding around that space rather than expose the posts so that it feels more planted and it brings it, and rather than the porch projecting out over, it extends that base a little bit.
You don't think that looked too busy? Having that
I don't know.
siding thing there?
I mean, if you put siding within some plantings in front of it, potentially.
So almost make it look like it's an extension of the house in a sense.
Potentially, yeah, well,
I think even if
they're,
you,
the other two houses, they're off of hedges, have siding around the porches.
want to hide things.
Oh, a
But,
screen?
well,
Like below the
as
deck?
screening, right,
Right.
rather than having it open and underneath.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But those are probably going to be like 6x6 posts that'll go from the footing up to the roof. And you could,
Yeah, my preference would be to run a continuous column.
well, sure, structurally, but you could also just wrap below to
Right, oh, yeah.
minimize the scale, like they're saying, and then have columns from the deck up that, instead of having a big beefy thing and then reducing it. Yeah,
So kind of minimizing the lower portion.
I think that's what you're
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the scale.
Because if you look at that, bungalows by their very nature are very horizontal. Where when you look at this, and granted you have the trees right there, which are very vertical, but that's almost the first thing that I tune in on is that verticality of those columns that come from the ground up. Where if you had somehow whatever they were talking, about using siding down there, if you didn't, it would really, really
Yeah, keep this
bring
one.
the visual of the house way down.
Yeah, it wouldn't be so bad, and then I think we mentioned before, it wouldn't be wise to have an open gable off the back. I know why you want to do it, but it wouldn't look right for the style of the house.
Sure. So the preference would be a just closed gable.
Close soffit. With a cedar or whatever you
Would
want
it
to
be
put on.
preferable to have just a shed all the way across, or?
No,
No, because
just not
you're trying to
open.
break that up, you get too much monotonous of.
but I kind of like, are you talking about in the
Because this
gable
comes
end
forward.
here?
Right.
This
Yeah.
projects, so you've got that gable there.
Yeah,
So you'd have to keep it this way, but
I kind of like having it open with those.
it's kind of cool, but it's not historic. You'd never see that on an old house, ever.
Yeah, we dealt with that not long ago, right here is when we were.
Yeah, that's right, and we was told they had to close it
Oh,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're wanting to do, I would do it too, but it just wouldn't be feasible in a house like this.
So we'll just put some skylights in it.
Eh,
I'm just kidding.
how about some LED can lights with some LCD?
And by the way, the 3 windows in the middle there aren't what would actually be there. We'd probably have
Those
two
are
windows.
left from
One-
the air.
Yeah, yeah.
They're one over, so it'd be like 1/1.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
I think you'd want to keep the 3, or maybe even 4.
Oh, do more?
Well, see, you've already got these single hungs.
Right.
And you've got those windows. Maybe, what is that space? Is it,
Well, it's going to change as we sort of morph it. It was a bathroom and a bedroom, but it'll become probably just a bedroom.
so actually what could look good is maybe bringing those windows up. So it's more of a horizontal
Yeah, no, that
of
actually.
3 windows that
yeah.
are a little smaller instead of like maybe this tall, maybe they're down a little lower, so it's a band and it kind of ties in because if you keep those at the same header height,
Yeah.
but then
Well,
reduce the height, bring them up so that you got these anchors of the double single hung or double hungs and then a band of,
Yeah, we could do that. We just gotta get egress.
So
but
you
I
don't
we
think
could-
those being double hung would be more, those 3 in the middle would be, it'd be better to have them double hung?
no, I'm just saying you can cut it in half and just make them narrower picture windows.
Kind of more up.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, what I would like to do there with what you're saying would be actually to maybe do like a 512 on that gable to get a little peak sticking up over the shed and then bring those windows up so that you have a reason for it to kind of,
Yeah, you could.
Go around.
And if those needed to be open, you can make those casements on
yeah,
the
we
other
could
side.
just do casements there. I think that would really look nice. It kind of,
If you could
fill
keep
in
it where
that
it's
space
at
a little bit.
and make those casements, but maybe bring them up a titch, that would,
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I like that.
as a thought.
Yeah,
Grouped, yeah.
okay.
I think that, so I know it probably wouldn't get used because of the location, but not having any stairs to the front porch, it kind of worsens the verticality and that it makes it very imposing that it's, you know, there's no, it's very vertical and there's no access and it's high up kind of, it's from that view. It doesn't necessarily need to come straight down, but maybe it could come up front and then down to the side, or, I don't know, maybe
What,
you might
what
consider.
about, let's see here. Actually, there we go. What about, I don't know if it's feasible to sort of make this more of the architectural entrance with the stair off of Hedges?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, the house up the slope faces, even though the address is Fifth Avenue, the main entrance faces Hedges. So,
The access is, yeah. So
so the
that's
front-
one of the reasons we looked at doing a door there and extending a porch is the thought that maybe it would make sense to have that present itself as kind of an entrance, architecturally anyways.
right.
Well, then that comes out, right?
Yeah,
Or protrudes.
Yeah,
I don't,
having the front, grand entrance of the home be non-functional is kind of weird to me a little, so.
I'll flip back
Other
to,
than that,
and yet I don't see a side entry as being consistent with the bungalow style. So I'm back to where you were with the stairs going up to the front
Right.
porch.
yeah, but typically bungalows were built on pretty flat pieces of dirt.
Also true.
So there's gotta be a little bit of working
Tweaking.
with this. I think a lot of it's fantastic. I think you've done pretty well and it doesn't really matter what you're gonna do. You're gonna hear about it from people in the neighborhood, I'm
Yeah.
sure. But it's definitely an improvement. I think everything's,
So one thing I didn't hear anyone say, so the other houses there, the main floor is on the same elevation as the garage.
right.
If you were to take the house lower than the garage, you would be able to bring the house down quite a bit more, it looks like.
the garage would be up higher and then you have to walk up to it or down.
You would. That's definitely the downside. But that is what the other homes in that
But you
slope
could,
have
you
done.
could drop it down.
They're,
Have
like
the
the one
garage
adjacent has the garage significantly lower than the elevation of the home.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying there.
Like that, if
So-
you, yeah, this elevation here, you can see where the main floor is of that other home relative to the garage. So there is a stairs issue then, but it lets you be more consistent with the style.
Can I ask you guys something? What do you want on the bottom? Do you want space, livable space on the daylight? That's what you want, right? I mean, you don't need to beat around the bush. That's what you're looking for. You're just looking to max
Or,
out.
yeah, kind of a future space.
Well, future or finished,
Right.
that's what they want. They're trying to max out their square footage, right?
Yeah, that is their wish, for sure.
Yeah. So to say you might eliminate the windows, that's not really what you want to do,
Correct.
right? That's just what I want to hear. Instead of, well, we could drop it, and that's not what you guys want to do.
Well,
But this
let
is
me
on the
flip
side
o-
of the house.
Yeah.
Let's see, so this one shows.
Front.
Yeah,
This
I
isn't
mean,
what they want.
we could certainly entertain the idea of dropping the house a couple feet from the garage. I think more than that starts to become a real logistical
Well,
concern, but.
I think
how
a
much are you
couple of
digging into the hill? I mean, can you dig in more
Yeah.
to get them what they want, but not have these big windows? I know exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
But to say that, oh, we don't really want it as space, that's
But it,
not true.
I definitely, if you go back to the design guidelines, there is really no such thing as a full 2.5-story bungalow, in my thoughts. And I feel like we just went through this with the other.
Not unless that one
application
story
as
is
well.
completely enveloped below ground with some small windows.
Right,
You know what I
if it's,
mean?
if it's more of a basement.
Yeah,
but-
yeah.
But a full
What if-
2.5 above.
What if we did, I was just talking to them about this before, and what if we just actually did everything we could to bring the grade on the outside up, even if that means the floor elevation inside is actually lower than the grade, kind of, daylight it, and do more of a horizontal window? I don't know if that really gets you there or not. I mean, if you're just sort of
I don't know.
fighting against it.
Yeah, you're just going in circles now. I don't know.
I mean, personally,
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna be a bungalow, in my opinion, it needs to pull down towards the ground. If it has a basement-ish that has perhaps small windows that are, are partially above, that's fine.
But the other argument could be, well, this is an odd, unique site, and here's taking advantage of space and slope, but it's not really appropriate for the style, but I'm just playing both sides here. But I like the thought that there are no windows there if you can hunker it down. But, hey man, if there's a daylight and they can get more square footage, that's the other side of the coin.
What if they had the windows on the west and the east? I don't know about the east, but the west elevation, not have anything across the front.
West is the front.
Well, I'm looking at the,
Fourth
You're talking the other side.
yeah.
Yeah.
The deck side.
So.
So,
let me
yeah,
go to-
so
This
there's
side, no,
along
that's
here,
Fourth
do,
Street, yeah.
yeah, so not have the windows there.
Unless you had a door there in the center.
And then
You
if
should
I could
have
just
you
add
could have
one.
a door with lights on it, with light, no?
If I could just
Well, that
add
wouldn't be right
one
for a
thing also
bungalow.
is that, the topo, so when we did the detached garage, that certainly created some challenges from a topographic standpoint because this knob is the highest point. I mean, you can kind of see, we're having to shave that down quite a bit. So just, understand that by detaching the garage, it made it, in a sense, more challenging to drop the house. We're actually having to fight against, because right now, I mean, this is a full height retaining wall here and there, just to dig that into the hill there. So we've got some serious challenges, from a topographical standpoint. So, I'd like to do everything possible to mitigate the height, but also make sure it's livable and, not strange.
Right. What's the old one? There's,
The two bungalows down on First Avenue both have finished basements. Both have windows that are legal egress. I'm not sure exactly how they accomplish that, but there's precedent for it. The windows are not like the ones we're looking at here. They're essentially oversized cellar windows.
They're bright casements.
But maybe there's a compromise area down there where you can get the square footage that you want without, with the lower elevation, and the reduced mass in the front elevation.
Yeah, I think you're gonna get much less pushback in public comments and things from the neighborhood if you can pull it down and make that more of make the window styling such that it's a basement with windows rather than a full story that's
Story.
You
exposed.
guys okay with maybe having the house a couple feet lower than the garage?
Means how much are we going down the hill?
Well, basically, we're talking about dropping, let me go
Because
back
if
to.
we go down the hill. we're
Now
losing
decisions
that
have to be
terrace
made this
space.
evening also.
No, that's what I'm saying. We can meet
Things to think
that. You guys
about,
have some
so.
ideas and you can come back with something, but it's,
Right,
you don't
right,
need to
yeah,
drag it
yeah.
out for.
No, I just seen what, so basically right here, see, those lines used to match up with each other and I actually dropped this down a couple feet. That was part of what I was trying to do. So what we'd be talking about is basically keeping the garage where it is here, but actually dropping the house like another couple feet. To help just mitigate that overall height of the building. So
Verticality.
you'd actually have your driveway going up to your garage and I guess potentially a couple steps down to that flat area. Which you can make larger because it would be lower, so that'd be the one benefit to that, I
That's
guess.
even better.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's a really good thought.
If you had a compromise and even went down a couple more feet, which kind of eliminates what you want to do, it would make the house look far better than what it is. I mean, it's really what, I mean.
Oh, you mean like
know,
4 feet? Is that kinda, is that what you're?
I think anything is gonna help you, so.
Yeah, sure.
I think what Grant's saying is if you drop that thing down 2-3 feet, suddenly it looks like a bungalow that doesn't have this extra thing that maybe you can go down, dig down and make a basement with some.
Well, yeah,
That-
there's parts, see, I mean, it's a side slope, so in one area, it's not gonna be a problem.
Right, so, yeah, I think, I mean, what'd you do with the retaining wall, the rockery that, attacking it from both angles a little
Yeah,
bit, you can
sure.
kind of get it close enough that it doesn't feel like a
Okay.
full story.
And landscaping makes a huge difference too.
Yep. So, kind of
Yeah.
a multifaceted approach to deal with the
Yeah.
site.
Nobody wants to not make it happen, but you guys are like, you've done so much, you've done a lot,
Yeah.
and it looks pretty cool. Just needs a couple of minor tweaks,
Okey-doke.
Yeah, I think you're getting real close.
so, anyway.
So do we?
Oh, we have public comment actually before.
Okay, but I mean, do we, just,
Say good luck.
And once again, it's non-binding, so
Binding,
they're
right.
taking everything.
Just as
kind of Absorbing
recommendations.
what they heard and kind of, they'll continue to work with staff and move forward on the next steps.
okay.
Thanks.
Ask a question? Are those all glass doors? Are they
I
French?
think those are French doors, aren't they? Full glass?
That was the plan, right here, yeah.
There and in the front?
And then on Fourth,
I would assume so. Right there.
Yeah, atrium or full light doors, yeah.
I guess we go ball.
Those aren't paneled
They're glass.
glass?
Glass. Full light. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just nervous about trying to incorporate a stair on that side, because I think it would actually make it feel more ominous in some ways. Just because of the height that we're trying to achieve.
Sure.
But maybe as it goes
Drop it
down,
down. It's
maybe
not
it
so
starts to become realistic,
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm trying to think, that porch it's not possible to wrap it around to that side access, is it?
That might even make it.
It would probably be
Here.
worse, yeah.
Yeah.
Just thought, I don't know. But again, like, they're just suggestion, ideas to think about, I guess.
Yeah, so kind of generally also try to have the column massing a little bit larger on the upper part and actually try to minimize the lower section in a sense. 'Cause
You
Maybe
can
visually-
size the
somehow-
horizontal line at the deck level.
You could probably keep the size on the deck level, but reduce it below the
Below
deck.
the
Yeah,
deck.
okay.
Even if it's a 6x6 and just wrap it so it minimizes it.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that it kind of,
Just take those vertical lines out of it, basically,
Yeah.
and try to,
Yeah.
yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, because like I said, that's what kind of
Yeah, no,
really
I like
jumps
that,
out
yeah.
at you.
So I could just cantilever it like a foot out past the columns too, and then that way the fascia will run in front and
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
mitigate that a little bit more.
Yeah, it makes it feel
Yeah,
less
'cause it
colonial
pierces that-
and sort of, yeah.
horizontal. I think that'd go a lot toward. Cool.
All right. Do you feel like you have some input?
No, we're good. I
And
appreciate
still
it.
doable?
Getting closer.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your willingness to work with us.
Want your mouse back?
Oh, yes, I would like my mouse back, thank you.
Now, Paul, you wanted to comment?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Paul Edgar, Kenema. I did submit some comments, and I don't know if any of you ever got any comments. I sent them in to
And
Christina.
you know, I didn't see them as, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize them as.
Well, I
public
sent them in
comments. Yeah.
specifically to this.
So I will forward those on to
Okay,
the
and
historic review board and add
because
it to
I
the
had
record.
gone through the design in detail, and I would have hoped that you would have been able to see it. First of all, there is no representation of this type of design above, Fourth Avenue and above, and this and any bungalow by code. This is twice the size of anything ever in Kenema. That's comparable of contributing structures. Now, does not mean something that's new. But if I'm we're comparing this, so in a compatibility issue or one to not detract from existing bungalow construction throughout Kenema that's been there. And so if I were to take and look at this, and if we could go through, and I would love to see us have some pictures of every one of them. So, because in trying to evaluate, and I sit on a historic review board for the county, and I'm pretty used to looking at these things too. And all I can say is the way it's designed, this has got Roman columns in it, and I pick up right with what Claire said. It just moves your eyes up vertical, and it's supposed to be flat and horizontal. If the building came down further down the slope, massive opportunities to improve it. To reduce the height this is truly a 3-story. You could call it a 2.5-story. But that's not representative of anything that is comparable or compatible, and therefore it detracts. The fact that there are no historical representations of bungalows on the upper hillside up through there, again, it's we're introducing something new, and on mass and design, there's an element right into the building design codes that says that detracts. So I would like to come back and say, let's take a serious look at the bungalow designs. If that's what somebody chooses to go to, I don't think that should be the primary design for this lot. But I would also turn around and say, we've got to take a look at the whole building design guidelines. These front doors like this, no, you can't, that's incompatible. The windows, when we go, you have to go through line item by line item. And a recent LUBA hearing said that the design guidelines as they are written are now applicable. They're not, they're just as valid in the code as anything. And so we have to go back to those. And in this case, I think when you go through it by line item by line item, and I would love to do this with them, with your designer. I would like to see a building built there. But as somebody that wants to see Kanema as a historic district honored, yes, I would like to see it honored. And why is it there? And how do we have the designs of the buildings in there compatible? And so it's my hope along that line that we achieve it. And I would be very happy to work with anyone within that regards to try to do it, and not to be positive in contributing to coming up with some meaningful results that are based upon our code and our building guidelines. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Okay, design advice. Now we'll move back to item 3 on the agenda,
Thank you.
preservation grant. And we have a commission report on that.
It's just not working tonight.
Sorry,
No?
1 second.
I'm not getting, I mean,
Yeah,
you
we
have
get
it now,
all-
I'm not
yeah,
getting it. Oh,
Yeah,
Whatever.
the presentation, yeah.
Here we go. Yeah.
1 second. So we have a preservation grant this evening, and I'm really looking for direction from the board on 2 items. One, and this is for a porch repair at 803 Fifth Avenue, and it's the Edward Nuttall House. And actually, I'm gonna go to, I'm gonna zoom out for a second and go to Google Maps for you.
I feel like Superman.
A couple minutes, it'll work.
Yeah. I thought that was on.
It's kind of a Rocky Horror moment there.
Okay. So just to show you where we are,
Oh, it's right there, yeah.
there we are. We are at the intersection
Amazing.
of Blanchard and Fifth up here. This is the Nuttall House. This is Oscar's old house, if you knew Oscar.
The house to the
Oscar.
right,
Right here.
we do, what's
Larson?
next to
Oscar
it? Go down.
Kiesler.
Oh.
This
Is it
way.
possible?
This way?
That one right, that house?
This is,
Okay. Yeah.
this was the new construction, Mr. Beislein
Ron Bus.
was right here. So this Google photo obviously is prior to
It's
that.
old, yeah.
Yeah, actually, you can see where
Because
this
we're-
is.
That
I think
addition
we
has been
approved
there for a
that
long time.
addition years and years
There's that
ago.
garage,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay, that's what I remember.
this house was resold and they're doing a big rehabilitation job on it. And the porch, it really is in bad repair. It needs to be almost replaced. And so the person who turned the grant in didn't really provide a lot of details. I'll go to the, what she submitted.
Oh, yeah.
It was
go back.
intense.
Kind of like this.
Yeah.
It's a serious drawing.
So, again, this kind of shows you, but,
There it is.
I mean, really what she's saying is she wants to place the floorboards. She, because of building code, this is more than 3 foot tall, 3 foot out.
She wants that around.
She'll need to put railings in.
She'll need to or she wants to.
That's a question we don't know. So there's both. So those are some of the questions. And then wants to bring railings down to a more formal kind of front stair. And if you go back to this, you'll see that this is kind of
Oh, jeez.
where they are right now. So I admit that that is
What's the
probably
problem?
less than ideal. But the, I think the policy question I'm looking for in front of the Historic Review Board is kind of 2 questions tonight. Sorry, I apologize. 2 questions tonight, which is, should preservation grant money be used for construction of compatible but not original railings on porches? And does this decision change if the railings are triggered by building code? And 2 is, for the grant this evening, do you want to give specific direction for the applicant to come back next month with more detailed drawings? I mean, she's in the queue, so she's fine. But do you want her to come back with more detailed drawings? Or do you feel comfortable providing staff conditions of approval for the porch design. And I'm really happy to implement it either way.
Yeah, I mean, safety's gonna trump style. I mean, from the city's perspective for code.
Right, but this is there's the policy discussion first, which is should grant money be used for this?
Right.
Right? And then,
Probably not.
and then if grant money is used for this, yes or no? And then based on what she proposed, can you condition the approval? And staff work to implement it, or do you want the applicant to come back with more detailed drawings?
But you could also look at it as, it can stay just the way it is, if you don't do anything to it.
Well,
If
she's
they're out-
wanting
Well,
to do
actually,
s-
her repair may change structural elements, which may kick in the building code.
Right, which would, that porch requires a permit, for
Right,
sure. They
correct.
take it out, and by doing that, that will also require a handrail.
Correct.
So from that perspective, and this is just me talking, from that perspective, it doesn't require grant money. That's your own money because you're doing things that are extensive. Does it need to come before the board as far as the style of it and what it looks like? Yeah, probably. But I don't think it's a matter of,
Well, don't we,
Grant.
Well, actually,
but don't we have
staff level
standards?
decision of the review.
oh, you can do
Yeah,
that with
yeah,
just the
yeah.
style, the
Yeah,
section
right.
of what
So
the
I
draw-
can do a staff level
Yeah.
review, but this is
Well,
this
the
question,
top and
this is a
bottom rail
preservation
and-
grant question.
Yeah.
So this will get reviewed on a staff level.
Gotcha,
And
never mind.
I'll be working to see just how a simple railing we can do. You know, wrapped railing, no exposed, pressure treated wood. It sounds like from what she wants, it's gonna be top and bottom rail.
Okay,
We're just
not
gonna try to
applied.
keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, the two bids are kooky.
Yeah.
And so I feel
on the
comfortable at
porch.
staff level that I can work with her to come up with the simplest railing one can do.
For a
when
simple
building codes
house,
are triggered
yeah.
for the simple house.
I-
The question is the grant, and then if you do agree on the grant, what level of detail do you need to approve it?
I'm just saying, I don't think it should, what's that?
Honestly, I don't think grant money is appropriate for this.
I don't think so.
No, I don't either.
I'd even make that motion.
Now, if she wanted to come back for replacement of the floorboards of
It's
it,
gonna be more than that. It's gonna be tear out and
Yeah.
restructure, for sure.
Yeah.
And
That,
that's,
that has actually, the board has approved that. So kind of rebuilding a porch has been part of the porch
Yeah,
repair.
I thought we just
and the
did
structural.
floorboards and stuff.
floorboards, but this porch, just looking at it, it's gone. The whole thing has to be rebuilt. And I don't think you could take a
structural,
grant
but-
to putting in fir tongue and groove or a handrail. I mean, you're any
Oh, yeah.
more than, no, I don't, I mean, my gut is no. And I'm always, hey, where can we throw the money? But that's me. I'm always happy to give money, but
Yeah.
something like this doesn't feel right.
So that's good direction for me because this has been a one we didn't know
But
when the
that's
applicant came
one
in.
person out of 5.
And so to me, I think the
It's 2 out
question,
of 5.
How about three
Three out of
How about
5.
4 out
the
of 5?
question I would
I
like
mean,
to
it is a
know
conundrum
is,
because you
How do you
don't,
feel, John? Well,
I guess as we go into future, I get this one, we go into future, some porches are kind of a rebuild, but they rebuild almost back to what they were.
Right.
But what I'm kind of hearing from you is it's not necessarily the rebuild, is that you're adding these new elements that are not necessarily, should be part of the grant
Yeah.
program.
but that are
Well,
required.
That are
If
required.
they yeah.
I don't, yeah, I guess
So there's a
I,
little splitting the difference I'm trying to tease out, so when future porch.
Well, let's say those
grants come
are,
I
in-
don't think the grant should go towards the railing portion or any new elements, definitely.
well, the porch
Right.
will be new, all of it. But let's say, for
Well-
example, the posts or these historic turnings that are indicative of this house, then maybe the grant money could go to getting those replicated. But
And the flooring, I mean, why
If,
couldn't,
if it's to replacing, rebuilding with like material, you know,
so
if
you're
it's
kind of
salvageable or
splitting
it's
hairs
like, if
as
not
to
possible.
which.
Yeah,
well,
because
if
the other flooring we replaced was not salvaging the existing flooring, it was replacing in full.
right, that was
Right.
just a disaster, that porch. But this porch, if it was done right, it'd be 1x4 tongue and groove, coming vertical or perpendicular from the house in a historic way. And you could say, well, that's a historic material, maybe you can give money for that, but at the same time, I don't know. Because it's really gonna go away, and the porch will be floating and they'll rebuild it. That's
So
what'll be required.
what you're saying is we need additional information as to what that decking's gonna be and.
Well, isn't that within your purview though, with
Well,
the
once again, I
staff?
think the staff exterior alteration, like the regulatory hat, I feel comfortable doing
Yeah,
that.
it's the money part.
It's really the question, you have this grant money, and you have this policy of, you know, Like, for example, the window, you know, you will, you're not gonna pay for a new window to replace a historic wood window. But if someone had a 1970s slider window, you'll pay for that. So you've created kind of these parameters of how your grant money should be used. And what I'm hearing is new elements such as the railings and the stairs are something you're uncomfortable spending preservation grant money on. And what I'm trying to kind of understand is but is that different than when sometimes you have to do almost a 100% porch rebuild, but you're rebuilding to match in-kind design and materials from what was originally, do you differentiate that as a difference?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It's really because so the piece of it that would, if they were building it back and didn't have the railings, that would be different. Whereas the railings are so much more of the new element porch. If you were pulling out what was kind of the flooring and the rebuild versus what were the railings and.
Right, so she could use your money on the, the railings.
your money.
Which that type of house, they didn't have.
Yeah, they didn't have it.
Railings.
Nope, they sat on the
just-
deck,
Yeah, they just,
and had their feet over the edge.
And so if she wants to, maybe use the money toward the floor, replicating the flooring, I don't know what she's wanting
And
to
you're
use.
just taking one
And then,
6.5
yeah, it's
dozen
kind
and
of
you're
like,
moving it around.
exactly.
And I
But
don't-
that's, so, I mean, to me, if she has to rebuild the porch because it's decayed to a point that it has, and she's, if you create that project and it meets the guidelines and the total cost of just rebuilding the porch without the railings, exceeds the 50% plus of what we, fund with the grant, that sort of thing, can fund that, and then the railings she can do on her own, you
I
can
know.
separate them and treat them as separate projects, basically.
You could, but
And
it's just
so-
like calling money something else. It's still the money.
Well, to me, it's kind of splitting hairs, but still,
Right.
we're not setting a precedent.
No.
And she is, hopefully she would be rebuilding the porches with in-kind materials. So,
This is your decision. So,
Right,
you know,
So
Can't
what
be
we
that.
would need then.
Can't
So this
would
is your
be
decision.
A breakdown between what part of these bids
Mm-hmm.
goes for the reconstruction of the porch itself and how much of it is for the
And what's the
railing.
floor material?
yeah, so,
That's
I
just
mean,
thinking.
one thing you can do is you can tell her, right, one option, what I'm hearing is you can say, we're uncomfortable paying any match for new railings and stairs. However, we don't have enough information. Can you submit a revised information?
Sure.
Breaking that out, and then the board can continue this conversation in August. And she's still in
knowing
the
that we
queue.
would
When
not
is that meeting?
fund
Yeah.
the railings.
But you may not
Yes,
fund all,
that's it,
you may still,
exactly.
I mean, you still may not, you're since continuing the
Right,
application.
right.
And the,
Is that the
but
21st? I'm sorry. Is that going to be the 21st?
it's the fourth Tuesday of the month.
Oh, 28th?
Ooh, I mean,
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I say that we continue it and ask for a itemized breakdown of the elements of the rebuild and make it.
Does it have to be a motion or can you just say that?
No, let's do a motion, because this is a,
So I'll move to continue the
Preservation.
HR 1808 or PG 1802 preservation grant request with the request that the applicant submits a itemized breakdown of the elements of the project by cost.
do you have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Ray Stovey,
Keep this thing moving. Aye.
Claire Met,
I,
John McLaughlin,
Aye.
Greg Blake,
Aye.
Ken Chair Basinger.
Aye.
Okay, I will let the applicant know that.
I thought your voice had cracked.
And thank you for, as this grant program comes on, there's gonna be odd projects
Yeah.
and,
Well, we
this,
just clarify as.
this is important because this is your money. I mean, since this is their HRBs. And so if you have, if the public is spending money, we need to be reaching the goals of the Historic Review Board. And the more guidance you can give staff, the easier it is for me because I can give guidance to people who want to apply.
You betcha. What's next?
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is public hearing, HR 18-05. Reduction in the size of the Thomas and Bridget Knowles rental house.
Is this the last thing?
It is.
Yes.
Because I just got onto this and I'm trying to remember. Agenda.
For what?
Where are we?
All right.
You'll have plenty of time while I read the,
But no one's even here.
It's
You
okay.
still have to do.
Yeah.
That's not true. You're someone.
Well, no, but I mean the applicant.
It's always prudent to read
the
the land use
applicant,
notice.
the applicant won't be here.
Okay.
We have one public hearing on land use applications on schedule tonight. A staff report has been prepared and has been made available to the public 7 days before this first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. The staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out by state law and Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision. For the public record, please begin all testimony by stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends to use PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or other exhibits in their oral testimony to be placed on the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they're not given to the staff, they will not be included in the records. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence and testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Historic Review Board makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be determined appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Staff report.
So actually, we have you visited the site and conflict of interest?
Oh, we do have that. Have the board members visited the site?
Yes.
Yep.
All members have visited the site. Are there conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts?
Nope.
All right, I will say right now that as a licensed real estate broker in Oregon, my wife and I have represented the owners of this property actually owned by two sisters at the time, and I think maybe it has been legally sorted out between the two of them and now belongs to just one of the sisters. We have represented the other sister in the purchase and sale of a number of properties, and at one point we did have this property listed, at which time it was discovered in the preliminary title report that the partitioning that everyone assumed had taken place when the newer house was built never happened. And that pretty much ended that. But nevertheless, because of this past involvement, I am going to decline to vote one way or the other on this application.
Makes sense.
Lots of words.
Thank you. Chair
Now we
Basinger.
can have the staff
Yeah.
report.
So I have a very small staff report tonight. It's a pretty simple situation. We have a 1960s ranch home, which is this 810 10th Street, and the Landmark, which is the Bridget Knowles rental. So I'm going to show you, this is the newer house. This is the Stark house, which actually looks quite small, but if you see the street goes down, so it's actually substantial in the back. So the applicant is actually coming to the city also with a partition, and they need to get an administrative lot size variance because just where the lots are, I mean, where the houses are, we're gonna draw the line. It makes sense for this parcel two to be slightly smaller, just because of the location of the house, rather than have like an odd little, corner to technically meet a lot size. And so what we're asking tonight is with this partition, the 1960s house in parcel one is decoupled from the Landmark, which is on the whole tax lot. So really it's just confirming that parcel two should encompasses the Landmark. And so staff recommends approval. The variance request and the petition request went out for public notice, and staff received 0 comments from the public on this, and actually received 0 comments from the public on this HR application. So on a staff level, staff is the only condition of approval really is that we acknowledge it's up here on the staff report, that parcel exhibit B, which is what is attached of that partition, that it is just parcel two. So if this is approved, from then on, the historic structure will just be on parcel two.
Cool. I can't believe the other house was built without,
It's the 60s.
yeah. Cool.
A lot of times people thought a quick deed was all you needed, and you know what? It's not.
Things were different then.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
So we just need to ask for public comment and then deliberations and vote.
Did you fill out a?
Will you fill out a public comment card and
Yeah.
get that?
Good. As a part of looking at this agenda, I went through it and spent a significant amount of time reviewing this one. It just had interest on me. And I would honestly just come back and say, it makes sense what they're asking for. I went through the code. I didn't see any conflicts that I could see that were evident to me. And I just see that I would just like to come back short of anybody else saying yes. I'm going to tell you yes and say that I felt like that this was it is a smart move on their part. It's kind of like you could see it was an oversight. No one ever really thought about it and should approve it and move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Approve it and go home.
That's moving on.
I move that we approve
We have to
this.
close it, don't we?
Oh,
Close the,
We will close the public hearing
Okay.
at this point and move to deliberations.
I move that we approve this pretty straight as can be application to separate the lot into 2 parcels,
As
As
conditioned.
proposed.
as proposed.
I'll second that.
All right. Grant Blythe,
Aye.
John McLaughlin,
Aye.
Claire Met,
Aye.
Ray Stobie,
Aye.
Chair Basinger.
Abstain.
All right, motion carries.
God, we're
So
out of
real
here, and
briefly-
it's still light out.
Real briefly, volunteer picnic, you have your passes. Please bring those if you want to come to.
So you don't need hearts this time?
No, you'll get your heart when you turn your pass in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're invited to
should.
join
Underneath
the
there.
city in thanking you for being on boards. We appreciate all the work we do, you know, volunteering is something that you do in your free time. So we'll have a concert in the park at the end of August, and we encourage you to come, listen to Johnny Limbo and the Lugnuts,
Yeah.
and hang out with other volunteers.
Cool.
You guys slid it over to us.
All right.
And this Thursday, I belong to the Oregon City Optimist, and we normally, in the past, have only done 2 or 3 of the food for the concerts. This time they asked us to do all of them. So, the Bomber's done a lot of them, and Singer Hill will be doing, but this coming up, this Thursday will be,
Sorry, it always closes, I apologize.
How many people does this let in?
It just lets you.
You, yeah.
You just get the free food.
but this weekend, NoHo's Hawaiian Cafe is going to be doing Kahlua pulled pork or chicken and rice and the whole, so it'll be pretty good. And it's the Beatniks.
There also is a new restaurant opening in the old train
Yes,
station.
it's already
terminal.
open.
Really?
Yeah, yes, it's Coasters Crossing. Brian Grant has the coasters up in Gladstone on the right-hand side there. And this one,
Is it like just American food kind of thing, or what is it? Just regular food?
yes, yeah, full bar, you know, and so he's done a really amazing job. He can fit like 60-some people up there, which, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And then also Friday night is the Trail Band, which used to be Quarter Flash, so they're doing a free concert
And that's at the end of Oregon Trail.
at the end of the Oregon Trail, right? So,
Well, thank you all. Kelly will be here next month.
yay!
So this is
Sure.
my
I'll be here.
last storekeeper.
You've been very good.
Recognize it.
It's been a pleasure to support. So.
Probably thinking, I don't want to go back to work.
Thank you for the help, and this meeting
All
is
right, well, have a
adjourned.
good evening.